Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I've been debating about doing this video for a while because I kind of feel like we all have similar stories involving the DCEU, especially many people like me have struggled through depression, have actually have these movies have actually helped us with our depression and overcoming it. And I kind of feel like we've all had a similar story about it, but in celebration of Zack Snyder's Justice League, I kind of feel like I want to tell my side of the story. Um, I had originally scripted this out, but it felt too well, it didn't feel like it had any emotion. It just felt like a point by point explanation. So I apologize for going off the cuff for this, and I apologize if I start rambling and just going off on tangents. So bear with me. I will try and make this as short, sweet, to the point as possible, so that doesn't go on for too long. Like I said, as I mentioned earlier, these movies have helped with depression, and I had been going through depression for 7 years of my life, and it was really dark. And these movies helped me, process it and help come to terms with it. In fact, all these movies represent different stages of my depression, and these characters represent memories, different personalities in my brain, and just many different things throughout life. And it also just represents this internal struggle within me, but also how hard life has kicked me to the curb, basically. To start out with, let's start with the first one, Man of Steel. The characters of Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent represent dear friends of mine. And these two friends represent a time in my life when I was first friends with them in junior high, because that time in my life, friendships are really important because they can influence you in many different ways, good or bad. And they influenced me in a good way, and they helped make me who I am today, and I will be forever grateful for that. And a lot of the interests I have in life are because of them, and my good personalities come from them as well. Superman Clark Kent represents all the good things in me. My gentlemanly ways, kindness, and all that stuff that we associate with good people is represented in Superman in my brain. And Lois Lane represents just basically love, whether it's intimate love, friendship love, caring, and many different forms of love is represented in Lois Lane. General Zod and the other villains represent toxic masculinity. And with Man of Steel, it kind of represents a time in my life going into adulthood, just finding myself not finding my place in my world, particularly my kindness, my good personality was not finding a place in this world, because it was struggling through life, because it seemed like life was praising more people's bad personalities than good. And every time I did something good, people had to say that was creepy. You only did that for your own selfish means, you were trying to get something out of it, or you just did it for your good deed of the day. And so it was just struggle. It was like, no, I just did that just because it felt right. That was the right thing to do, but people kind of just feel like, no, it's not. So I was struggling to find a place in this world, and I also because of that, I was dealing with toxic masculinity and it trying to just act out and just make people feel bad. And that's what, Man of Steel represents to me, is just my good personality saying, no, let's just continue being good. But that continues on with Batman versus Superman. Batman versus Superman continues that story, but Batman, Bruce Wayne represents my subconscious self, who, runs around in my head, thinking of things and, going, all that stuff. Alfred represents my consciousness. Martha Wayne and Thomas Wayne represents innocence, and we all lose innocence at some point in our lives, whether it's through some tragic event in life, or in cases like with me, it was life just kicked me hard to the curb, and so that's where I lost my innocence. And Wonder Woman represents my feminine side, and the piece of my mother that's always with me. Lex Luthor represents my ego. And of course, Doomsday, being continuing from Zod, it represents toxic masculinity as well. And Batman vs Superman represents my internal struggle mentally, going against my good personality, because internally I was starting to think that my good deeds are harming myself more than doing good, and because I was hurting myself from the inside outward through my depression, and seeing my good personality as a threat to myself really, really did some damage and was really bad. And I really wanted to change myself and stop being good. It was doing nothing for nothing. It was always being seen as something that was stupid, and just it just didn't need there was it was the Superman question: do we need this anymore? And so do we really need a Superman in this world? And that's really true. It's like, just what good does it do? So and that's what that movie represents to me, and particularly the end and fight scene between Batman and Superman was really showed the struggle between my two personalities in my brain. And then, of course, in the movie, when he says you're not a god, you're not even a man, in my brain it was more when one personality saying to the other, you're not a gentleman, you were never even a man. And then the Martha scene where save it's Martha was save my friend, save this person, the memories of this one friend, because of how important it is. And hearing that in my head, it was like, if I kill this good personality, this good side of me, I am therefore no better than life kicking me to the curb and killing my innocence. And so I had to, save those memories. And then, of course, teaming up and going against toxic masculinity, and I having to sacrifice my good personality to stop toxic masculinity from overtaking me, is representative in that climax in Batman vs Superman. And after that time in my life during the Depression, I was kind of a shell of a man. I still did some good acts, but it was just hollow. It was feigned kindness. It didn't really have any feeling to it, or I was just mostly just going through the motions. And that's where Suicide Squad comes in. Suicide Squad feels more like controlling my bad personalities to try and keep fighting. And of course, Harley Quinn is representative of my dependency issues, and Joker is the clown in the box. The clown in the box is something we all have. We all have a clown in the box in our head, and if that clown gets out, it will wreak havoc. It will cause a lot of problems for everybody, and even possible the world. We don't want something like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker happening in real life. That's why we keep the clown in the box. And my dependency was really pining for that clown to come out and do some real damage, because there is a time during depression when you do want to lash out, you want to make people feel bad, you want to at least in my depression, you want to really just make people feel like you feel, and just make them feel worse. And so basically that's what those characters represent. But I don't exactly know what the other Suicide Squad characters represent in my mind. They just probably other bad personalities, other bad things or memories or something. But it's just, if controlled amounts of it can actually do good sometimes, depending on the situation. But that's just basically it. It was just using those personalities in my mind to continue fighting on and continuing on. It helped a little, but not a lot. And then Wonder Woman is basically that movie. I've already said what Wonder Woman represents. Steve Trevor represents basically loss and sometimes even regret, because we regret things, and we've lost a lot of people through our lives, whether it's like loss of contact, death, or arguably, ending of friendships or relationships or so. That just, Steve Trevor in my mind represents that, the loss of something, and sometimes even regret. And Wonder Woman in my mind represents a time when just basically my feminine side was starting to come out and be more representative, and just basically also finding its place in this world, and having life just beat it, just basically pummel it to the ground at times, and trying to control it, because being a man, we've always been told not to show emotions or stuff like that. You have to be a solid rock basically. And my feminine side was trying to come out and be more emotional and stuff. And that was a part of my problem with depression, was I wasn't showing much emotion. I wasn't expressing myself. And that's what the Wonder Woman was to me. My mind was struggling to come to that and able to overcome that bit of, that stigma of masculinity, that you can't show emotion, you can't cry or anything like that, and just coming to terms with all that, and showing love, affection, and all that stuff that Wonder Woman represents. And then of course comes Justice League. Of course, this would be better representative in the Zack Snyder cut as opposed to the Justice League theatrical cut. But even the theatrical cut did show some of it, that what it represents in my mind, but not a lot. But the Zack Snyder cut will show it more, I'm hoping. But basically, I've already said what Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman represent in my mind. The Flash represents my youth, from my teenage years to my 20s. Cyborg represents my damaged self, because from injuries, both mental and physical, just emotional damage, mental damage, all that stuff. It's just a patchwork of myself put together there. And Aquaman represents my true masculine side and is a piece of my father I always keep with me. Martian Manhunter represents adaptation, because we all adapt to changes in life, and sometimes we hate change. I know I hated change for a long time, but we do change with the changing times, and even to this day, things still change. And that in my mind, the adaptability to change with the times helps a lot of going through life. And of course, I'm going to use characters from the Zack Snyder cut as opposed to the theatrical cut. But fans will understand what I'm saying when I say these characters. Steppenwolf represents my denial of depression, because I was in denial for a long time. I didn't even know I was in denial until I thought about it, because I kept coming up with excuses like, "Oh, I feel bad," or "This is bad because it's just life. This is adult life. You feel like shit. You hate your job, you hate your life, and you just keep going." I just kept coming up with excuses over and over again. And that denial did a lot of damage and really made the advancing force for depression to seep in. Darkseid represents depression in my mind, the actual depression. Desaad, of course, is torture, because we all torture ourselves, and Granny Goodness represents the leading force of depression. The parademons is like the army of depression, the depression, the feeling of depression that swarms you, because depression seeps in and just envelops you like a black hole. And that's what the parademons are, is the swarming black hole that envelops you. Excuse me. And then of course Green Lantern represents hope. And just basically all those personalities in my head. Justice League, the movie, Zack Snyder cut, represents all my personalities just coming together to take down denial. And taking down denial was a huge step and was helpful in me overcoming my depression over time. If we had Justice League 2 and 3, they would represent the last half of my struggle with depression, and particularly with Justice League 3, when actually confronting depression. And I had, as we know, the story going forward, because Zach has openly talked about his what the stories of Justice League 2 and 3 would have been. We know that Batman sacrifices himself, and that was kind of true, because as I said, Batman represents my subconscious self, and I had to sacrifice my old subconscious self to stop depression, because so I needed a new change in life. And Lois Lane giving birth to a child at the end would have represented the new subconscious self being born, this new me that would lead my mental state throughout the rest of my life. And that's that would have represented what those movies showing my struggle with depression throughout. and I would love, and I'm hoping with Zack Snyder's Justice League, the those other two movies will come out. Um, and of course, staying with Justice League, you're probably wondering what would the nightmare scenes represent. The nightmare scenes represent depression taking complete control of me, and just because when I was in my deep dark hole with depression, that's the vast wasteland of Earth that we see in those scenes very much represents in my mind what it felt like in my head, just a vast wasteland of nothingness, of just hate, anger, and driving myself to end it. Because there was a time towards the end of toward in my depression that I did actually consider ending it myself, ending my life, and that is not a good feeling. And that's what the nightmare scenes represent, is just towards the end, almost going to, basically on the verge of going to that state of just ending it. And of course, you're probably also thinking about the history lesson scenes where the scenes where we find out about Euraxis, young Darkseid, coming to Earth to try and take it over, and before, in the early stages of Earth, those scenes would probably represent because of how the time period it would probably represent my teenage years, because we all go through a lot of drama in our teenage years, and I guess depending on the person, Euraxis would probably represent some teenage drama, whether it is depression or anxiety or in my case, existential crisis. That's what Darkseid would represent, and the old gods and other people in fighting against Darkseid would represent the early stages of what these superhero characters would represent to me, and then taking those down. And the mother boxes, I don't know. I think those would represent either the seeds of depression, or just they could also be useful tools to help fight depression as well. It's kind of up to interpretation what the mother boxes would be. Let's see what else. After taking down my denial, we've got Aquaman. The Aquaman movie represents my true masculine self after coming with the denial, trying to, and struggling with depression, and working to, confront my depression. My masculine self was trying to find its place in this world. Like, what kind of man am I really? What kind of man can I be? And, who should I be for the rest of my life? That type of thing. And then overcoming, just vanity and some other, masculine things as well. And then there's also Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Represents my dependency, moving away from the clown in the box and trying to, again, find some sort of independence for oneself and not be dominated by, lingering depression or just other bad personalities in my mind. And then Shazam represents me finding my childhood self. We all have that kid version of us in ourselves. That saying, we all have a kid in us. That's very much true. Billy Batson represents my childhood self, and Shazam represents what I always thought I would be as an adult. And that working with me, finding that young version of myself again, and using that to just keep my imagination alive, to try and find hope and other things in life, and to continue going. And those movies in particular helped a lot with depression and post denial before going up against depression. And those were very helpful. And Wonder Woman 1984, while it is connected to the universe, it wasn't about depression to me. Wonder Woman 1984 was more of an isolated film. It and therefore kind of represents a different time in my life, a more recent event. I said my friend Jonathan Catton represents a dear friend of mine, Brandon, who I've known since junior high. We were friends on social media, but then we lost contact with each other, and I found out that he had passed away recently, and when I'm talking to people, I found that he had been struggling with life, and that he had depression, and that he took his own life. and he passed away in July of 2019, and I only found out about it in February of 2021, and that was hard. And I'm not mad at anybody for finding out late. Facebook is weird. Sometimes you see people's posts, sometimes you don't, and sometimes you just don't see them at all. I thought he'd quit Facebook, but no, he didn't. And I did heal from it, from his death, but it was just, there was just so many lingering feelings and pain and grief. I was like, I thought I was over, I thought I'd come to terms with everything, but I didn't. And Wonder Woman when I was thinking about doing this video, I started thinking about Wonder Woman 1984, and then it just clicked in my head of what this movie represents. And it represents me coming to terms and grief over my friend Brandon's passing. Like I said, Steve Trevor represents loss and regret and stuff, and him suddenly coming back into Diana Prince's life represents, it's him coming back into my life, but in a mental state, because he was constantly in my brain all the time, memories of him, and this and that. I was finding comfort in that. Barbara and also Cheetah represents my jealousy and rage, because I was being jealous of people who knew of his passing years ago, being able to go to his wake, funeral, and some other stuff, and overcoming the loss as well, and seeing other my friends being, doing really well in my life, and I was getting angry, I was jealous, I was angry at myself, and this and that. Maxwell Lord represents greed, and the wishing stone kind of represents basically, I don't know the exact term of this, but I'm going to say creature comforts, because I was wishing a lot, and my greed was taking advantage of this. I was like wishing, oh, I wish I had stayed more in contact with my friend. I wish I had hung out with him more, because I didn't know he was still living in the same town I am. I only found out after finding out at his passing that he was still living in this town. I was like, I wish I knew that. I could have hung out with him more, or something like that. I thought he moved away. So I was kept wishing all these things. I kept having, these wishes were giving me mental fantasies of hanging out with him, talking to him and stuff. And I was finding, comfort with that, and I wasn't letting go because of that. And I had to, finding that difficulty, I had to confront my regret and loss, and I had to say, you have to let go, you have to walk away and renounce all those wishes, basically. Renounce all those creature comforts and stuff. Because they were all just hurting me internally. They would give, even though it was comforting, but it was giving me pain and grief and hurting just so much. So I had to renounce all those wishes and let go and find contentness, and trying to not only convince myself, but also my mental state and my greed, because my greed was still wanting those wishes and just, wanting that feeling of comfort. And I had to convince myself, tell myself that those comforts are a beautiful lie, that they don't really, they feel good, but they're also hurting. And it's convincing because of that comfort, but that pain will be there. So I had to, confront my greed and jealousy and rage, and prove the beautiful lie, and renounce all those wishes, and so I was able to find contentness and let go and be content that even though my friend's gone, I can at least be happy that he is at peace now. He's no longer suffering, and that he's in a better place. So that's what all these movies mean to me, is there's different stages of my life. If I hadn't overcome my friend's passing, I probably would have gone down that dark hole again, and probably would have gone through depression again. But thankfully, I did. And that's what Wonder Woman represents to me, is this isolated incident in life, and all these other movies represent different stages of depression in my life. And I'm hoping with the success of Zack Snyder's Justice League, that stage of my life of confronting my denial will be properly shown, but as well as the director's vision. But also we'd get these other movies that were promised to us as well, and we would get better representation of confronting depression, or just confronting any woes in life. And also I Also, these movies are very important to me because even though, you know, a lot of comic book movies are child friendly and aimed more children, these movies are more adult because they, being an adult, while I do enjoy any comic book movie, sometimes I feel like I'm being patronized or, looked down upon for being an adult, for even not being a kid and enjoying it. With these movies, it was like they treat you as an adult, even no matter what your age, and it's like, watching these movies, yes, they're great scenes, they're great action scenes sometimes, and all this, but they have layered stories. And whenever I leave the DCEU movies, I actually leave thinking about it. I pick it apart, I analyze it, and sometimes I even go back and rewatch it over and over again. Sometimes finding the same meanings, new meanings, or something I missed. It's worth rewatching over and over again. Um, and also the style is just very adult as well, and it looks good. The writing is good. The directors are great, with the exception of Joss Whedon. The And also the storytelling is great too, and having having the Zack Snyder's vision being taken away, it was like, you know, a slap in the face to everybody, not just to Zack Snyder, but to everybody, because it was like, you changed everything. It was for adults, and now you're making it for kids. You know, it's like, as adults, we don't want to be left out. We want adult characters, and the characters that we grew up with, we want them to grow up with us. So I'm hoping, you know, that I'm grateful that Zack Snyder's cut is coming out, and that is a great big step, and hopefully we get more something to that, because, you know, they're acknowledging the whole multiverse, so there'll be movies for everybody, but it'd be great to have these adult movies for us adult fans of these comic book movies, and also be able to still connect with these characters and help us go through the struggles in life, because these characters, particularly with the DCU movies, are going through the ringer. They're not just getting slapped in the face or punched, they're going, oh, I can't defeat this villain. They're dealing with stuff. They're dealing with life. They're finding it difficult, and so that see them struggle helps us go through the struggles in life and helps us overcome those. And that's basically why the DCU is important to me, is because it helped me not only overcome depression, it's helping me process the struggles with life, and just find ways myself to overcome them, and still be inspired by these characters. And that's why I hope that the DCU continues, as well as the other DC movies and TV shows as well. And that's basically it. I thank you all for watching this video. If you yourself are struggling through life, or going through depression, or even thinking about suicide, please seek help. There is nothing wrong with seeking help. I understand there's still a stigma with therapy or depression, or trying to be vocal about your struggles in life. I understand that. I get it. There is nothing wrong with coming out and saying you're hurt, you're in pain, you need help. There's nothing wrong with saying you need help. Just there are phone numbers to call. There's suicide hotline numbers. You can call a therapist, talk to your friends, talk to your family. Just speak up. There's nothing wrong. Please continue going forward. I thank you all for watching this. You'll have a lovely day, and take care of yourself. Thank you. Bye.